Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Alia, and I am so delighted to be here today with Living Light, aka Eartha Harris. Welcome. I am talking with her today as part of the interview series I've been doing with all of the artists that have contributed to the feminine medicine music. And Living Light created a remix of the track Choose, which is my collaboration with Tara Davina, which appeared on Feminine Medicine Volume 1. And it's so gorgeous. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. It's the link to go listen to it is here in the description to the video. And along with the link to the whole album. So there's a bunch of other amazing tracks from artists like Govinda and Luke Mandala and many others. But today's focus is about Living Light, and I really wanted to introduce you to all the artists and let them share about their musical path and their evolution. And so yeah, we're going to dive into that. I'm going to introduce her via her bio. And well, first I want to acknowledge, thanks everybody for joining live. Thanks for the hearts, and Marie, thanks for your comment. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, let's get into it. All right. Entrancing dub and body-moving up-tempo electronic opuses are the hallmark of the Living Light sound. Blending global beats, indigenous voices, swirling symphonic melodies, and a dash of psychedelia that has lit up audiences coast to coast. Eartha Harris officially launched her Living Light project in 2012, having spent half a decade behind the keyboards in the pioneering live electronic hybrid Scilab. She now has 2 full albums and 2 EPs under the Living Light name. Her most recent pair released in 2016 on Desert Dwellers Desert Tracks label, in addition to compilation appearances on Merkaba Music and Sofa Beats compilations, and official remixes for Papadozio, Closey, Wildlight, Desert Dwellers, and many more heavy hitters on the festival circuit. The next Living Light album, The Great Attractor, slated for 2018 release, will strike a balance between up-tempo dance and side-dub focus while maintaining its connection to that classic Living Light sound. Sweet, can't wait for that. So Eartha, we would love to hear a bit about your journey as an artist, and you've gone through so many different phases of your path. I'd love for you to share with us a bit about that evolution for you.
Sure thing. And first of all, thank you, Alia, for having me back, or for having me on. We tried this yesterday. We had some technical snafus. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me, and for everyone else out there that's watching. Yeah, my path started really young. So my parents say that actually when I was a baby, they would hear me, like just a few months old, like start singing in my sleep at night. And apparently I've just always been musically inclined. I've pretty much always had some way of making noise or some way of making sound, including like little tiny, like little kid pianos all growing up, which later graduated into, I remember when I was in 3rd grade, I don't know how many of you remember the Commodore 64 computer, but that was something that I was really fortunate to have gotten. And that was the first time I really started to, as like a little kid, like play around with like music composition. There's actually like this plastic keyboard, like musical keyboard that you put over the typing keyboard, that would allow you to like play the keyboard as notes. And from there, I went on to like little Casio Porta sounds where you could like record your voice in and record dogs barking, stuff like that. But I was like, learned to play like little songs on that. And the Yamaha Porta sounds came along. They had built-in sequencers. And then by the time I got into college, I started working in audio MIDI lab and learning digital production there. And then joined up with my first band. That was actually a goth industrial duo group. And that was when I first started touring as well. as well as like really, really learning how to sequence music and produce music. And I actually sang in that group and played bass guitar. And it was funny. I had this gigantic bass, and I was just like little tiny goth girl.
Yeah,
so that was my early experiences. But that inspired me to start my own solo project. My first solo project was called Project Sphere. And this, I did this for quite a few years. And again, I was singing on it, but it was mostly, it was all electronic music. Some people would liken it to like a sort of darker, more industrial Madonna's Ray of Light kind of vibe, if you remember that album. So it had like those like dance influences and some of that like world influence into it, but it was a little edgier.
I just want to say I saw that you put Madonna as one of your influences in your list of artists that you were inspired by on your Facebook page. Like, yeah, right on, me too.
I should probably also mention Jim and the Holograms are the influence behind me playing a guitar right now, but for those of you that remember that cartoon. But yeah, so I did this first solo project called Project Sphere for a whole bunch of years. Now, this was during the time when before the sort of music revolution happened. So before social media happened, this is back when you really were dependent on being on a record label. And I remember like Wax Trax, which is a really big label at the time, had expressed interest in me, and I was just holding my breath, like they're just about to sign me for so long. And it got exhausting because it was very difficult to get bookings without a booking agent. There's no way to release music back then without a record label. And so, for a couple of years, I got kind of disillusioned and was just, decided to try to hang up my music career. It really only lasted a couple of years because I got pretty depressed. And then the universe sort of picked me up by the scruff and dropped me down in Burning Man. This is 2006. It was like, look at all these people making amazing things and just not even questioning it. And they're not doing it, for the approval of others. And they're not doing it for a career. They're doing it because this is their calling. Yes. And I just realized that I was really cutting off like my connection to creation, my connection to source, as I like to call it, and just standing in my own way. And so I decided to reintroduce myself to the music world. Shortly, about a year later, I joined up with Scilab, which was a live electronic jam band. So we're all electronic except for our bassist, who played bass. And we had our drummer played a Roland V drum kit, which is a whole array of electronic drum pads. It's huge. I would play anywhere between 4 to 5 keyboards. So it was a lot of, it was a whole big rig. We had someone who would drop samples and someone who would affect the sounds on the Roland V drum kit. Sometimes we had another keyboardist joining us. So we would roll out as this big posse. And we had tons of gear, and we'd just be standing in like piles of black spaghetti on stage, literally. It took us like at least an hour to set everything up and equally to break down. But that was a really incredible experience. And I did that from 2007 to about 2012. And we toured up and down the East Coast. But it was really difficult for us to fly because we had so much gear. But from that experience, I really became roadworthy. I really learned how to tour. I learned modal theory, which is just, a must for if you're ever going to be playing live improvisationally, and that's, helped my music immensely. I just really value that time that I had with them. But I wanted to see the world. I got the travel bug, the way I think some people get the baby bug, or it just became like I became all obsessed with seeing the world. I see pictures of people traveling and be like, no, why can't that be me? So I really wanted to find a way to bring my music to new places. And the only way that I could do that was to go back to self-production. So I started, long story short, I started Living Light as a way for me to be able to actually lightly put everything on my back and to also just go back to my own, just having my own production be contained, because I had a really clear vision of the sound that I wanted to be bringing out at that time.
Yeah. And I know that you have a particular intention behind your music, and especially behind the name Living Light that you've called this project. I wonder if you could share that with people. I think it's a really beautiful philosophy.
Yeah, so the name Living Light has multiple meanings. When I first named it Living Light, is because I was really inspired by the fact that everything's made of exploded stars. That, you know, stars explode, and everything is originally light before it turns to matter. And so that is sort of like a way of looking at things in a transcendental perspective. So it's a way of looking at things like if everything is at its core living light, then it's easier to look beyond social differences, to look beyond religion, to look beyond skin color, and to look beyond gender. And which was sort of important for me as a woman, because in my earlier days I did receive some rejection. I was outright told by, you know, some labels and booking agencies that, like, yeah, we love your stuff, but we're not really looking for like female artists right now. Like, it's actually happened. So I really wanted to have something that was just the music just speaking for itself. So that was some of the original meaning behind the name. But as I thought about it, the name began to unfold in all these other ways. And I realized that if I were to look at the word light as opposed to heavy, what does living light mean? You know, historically, when I was younger, I definitely battled through depression. It was actually, took me a long time to realize a lot of it was actually dietary stuff that was causing me to struggle. But I would have this very heavy kind of dark mindset when I was younger. And it's taken me, you know, decades of like turning towards the light to create in myself the ability to live lightly, to live a light mindset, to coming from a place of love and hope and positivity, and be looking at the glass half full, and and in doing that, I can radiate that positivity out with others. Yogi Bhajan has a saying that you should make yourself so happy that other people become happy just by looking at you. And that's a philosophy that I've really tried to embody into myself for the last at least 15 years. And so living light that way, a light state of mind, is important to me. But also, I've always been an environmentalist, and I've always cared for the delicate balance of this planet and leaving a light carbon footprint. It's also really important to me. More difficult now that I'm touring and playing shows and having to fly in airplanes, but I feel like I've done a pretty good job of it throughout my life. So, so that's another meaning that showed up for me. And living not too materialistically is also really important to me. So living light that way. And then the last joke I like to put in is that, at the end of the day, I was able to tour to more places because I could hop on an airplane with all my gear on my backpack. And so, instead of having the full band. So I was also living light that way.
So many dimensions where this was applicable.
Yeah, it just kept unfolding like 1,000-petal lotus blossom.
To be yours. Yeah, and I so appreciate too the way that, just stylistically your sound really transports the listener and the dancer into a very cosmic place. And I really feel like you are, really connecting us with the stars through the particular way that you weave your sounds together. And yeah, it's really and that lightness that you speak of, it's very felt in your music and an experience that we have being in your transmission.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just the way that you share yourself online, and just the way that you aim to inspire people, and you're offering also your nutritional services, as a way to support people with their bodies. And there's just, I feel the way that it's just become just your way of life and the way that you express in the world.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels good. It does.
It was interesting to me to hear you share that you definitely got turned down just for being a woman at one point. And I'm curious if there have been any other recent times at all where you feel like, being a female in the industry has been a limiting factor.
Well, that's a tricky question to answer because there haven't really been obvious times like those two times. One time was with the record label that outright said they weren't looking for. I mean, at that point I was singing, and so like not that that gives it that much more merit, but they were just saying that they weren't, that wasn't really the sound that they were looking for. They weren't looking for like female vocalists and then another time was actually a friend telling me about he had a friend of his that ran a booking agency who they were talking about me, and he outright told him that said, quote, up until about, this was quite a few years ago, but the quote was, up until about a year ago, there was no draw for women, and we wouldn't have any. I wouldn't bring on a woman as a booking client or into the booking agency. But as far as recently, I would say that there's really no way of telling. I think that, for the most part, I've been treated with a lot of respect in my career. And especially when I was in the jam band scene, because I mean, I'll be honest, in all my years of playing, I never saw another woman on stage. And I think maybe there could be a reason for that. The jam band scene can definitely be a little, it's a little rough around the edges, so to say. So I think a lot of women just might not, have interest, but I was definitely always treated with a lot of respect. And if anything, there was, maybe even extra energy, wow, there's a chick on stage playing keyboards. That's awesome, and people helping me with my gear and stuff. So, for the most part, it's been, in my career, I've had, very positive responses. One thing that, I do feel like sometimes maybe because of my project name or because I'm a woman, that there can be a hesitancy to click play on my stuff because there might be, there might be suspicion that I'm like whale song or new age music or something like that. And I get it. There's so many artists out there. If you're having to go through, artists really quickly, to pick something, then, you kind of do look at face value. But when in actuality, I think that my music, does have an and it does have an edge, and it has that, deep dub sound to it. And more, there's, I'm getting more and more of a balance of those. That masculine and feminine sound in my music, I think. My new material is actually even more so that way, as it's starting to come into more dance music and sort of bass styles. One thing that I will admit, it's funny because it's actually sort of the opposite of what we're talking about, but that I will admit that I get this little a little twinge every time it happens is when people tell me that they've booked me because I'm a woman. And I know that they're coming from a place of total integrity, and that they're really they're wanting to bring the balance of gender into the scene. But I'll have events or festivals call me up so we have a whole lineup, and then we realize we would really like to have a woman on this lineup as well. And I think that's great, but at the same time, I'm like, well, do you like my music? Because I really I don't want anyone to not book me because I'm a woman, and I don't want anyone to book me because I'm a woman. It's I just want them to listen to my music. If you dig the music, then I want to rock it, and if you don't, then I don't, and that's totally fine. No hard feelings. So I do think that, and I think we're moving closer and closer to that place, especially as more female musicians, electronic producers, and DJs come on board, and it's definitely becoming less of a novelty, which I think's awesome. But as far as the little twinges I've had of things along the way where I'm reminded of my gender, it can be a little frustrating, but for the most part, it's been pretty positive.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I know it's sort of I think we're in an interesting evolution right now, in the industry. And I so appreciate the producers that are interested in presenting a more balanced lineup. That I think that's an amazing direction, because historically it's been very, very weighted on the side of men. And part of that is because there's just fewer, women producers, just in general, who are kind of, stepping in. But I think that's changing. I think more women are feeling empowered and inspired, and feeling like they can learn the technology and all that. But it's an interesting thing. Obviously, for me with feminine medicine, I've chosen to take a really direct path with that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Name and fully just, with the message around bringing more feminine frequencies to the dance floor. And I realized, that has its advantages and also its disadvantages. But I think ultimately the movement in the direction of featuring more women, I think, is positive. And I hear you that we just want to also just have our music be appreciated, regardless of what gender we are, and have that be the focus. Yeah. So, well, great. So, is there anything that you would like to share about anything you have coming up? I know you mentioned you work on the album, and it has a slightly different style and flavor to it. But it's an evolution of the Living Light sound, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the new album. It's called The Great Attractor, and The Great Attractor is actually a supermassive black hole that's in the center of our current star cluster that we live in. But I also just thought the name was just, could have so many different meanings. And, for me, I've just been really focusing on like, what am I subconsciously or unconsciously attracting into my life, whether it's good or bad. And, taking ownership and responsibility of like everything that, that is in my life is something that, I can look at as attracting in some way. So a lot of the themes of the album are, they're themed around cosmic occurrences as usual, as well as psychological occurrences, and mainly, I study Tantra yoga, and so there's a lot of correlation to like tantric deities and tantric beliefs in it as well. So it's sort of like space tantra. But the sound of it is a progression. There are sort of hallmark living light or trademark living light sounds that I'm keeping in it. I love melodic bass lines. I love flutes. I love, arpeggiated synth parts or gated synth parts. I call it like sparkly fairy dust. I sprinkle on things, and those like side-ebb sounds are in there. But as a foundation, I am leaning a little more towards, in some of them, away from like the straight up dub sound, a little more into some of it has a little bit of like a housey, progressive housey kind of vibe to it, and a lot of it also has a little more of like clearer, stronger bass sound to it. So, but it's been really, really exciting playing out these tracks. I just got off a tour for 2 weeks in Colorado and then California. I was playing with Earth Cry and Koali and Desert Dwellers, and the response that was happening on the dance floor to these new tracks is just like, I think about it, I get a little misty eyed, just seeing people really move. And that's really what's so exciting about writing music that's even more dance oriented, is that, I can almost feel this more energetic connection with the audience when that happens. And there's nothing like seeing an audience light up and get excited about something that you've created. It's just the absolute best feeling as an artist. So yeah, so I'm really excited about the progress on the new album, and I'm wrapping up the last few tracks over the next couple of months. So awesome. Yeah, fingers crossed it'll be out soon.
All right, guys, we'll look out for that. And you can hear Living Light's music on SoundCloud. It's just Living Light. They would search for that, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, and again, check out the remix that she produced for Feminine Medicine Volume 1 remixes. It's so gorgeous. And I'm so grateful for the work that you did on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an honor. It's a great track.
Yeah. And such a delight to talk with you today. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We super appreciate your support. We are independent artists, and we absolutely need your support and liking and sharing and supporting us with the music. So thank you. And great. Well, love and blessings to everybody, and be well.
Thank you. Be well.